Hello, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing near-death experiencer Ellyn Dye. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience, Ellyn?
I'd be happy to. Well, let's see. I guess I'm first and foremost consider myself a writer and a communicator. And I had a nice long career as a writer editor, and now I am officially retired from my day job. But now I get to write about things that I like. And I've written a novel which incorporated, it's an adventure novel and fantasy, and it incorporated the things that I learned about how life works during my NDE into this novel, because back in the late 80s, I had my NDE in 1985. In the late 80s, people were not writing books about their NDEs. So I felt like I wanted to document it somehow. And that's the way I did it. So I have a fantasy novel called The Search for the Crystal Key that's available on Amazon. I write a periodic, which is kind of quarterly newsletter online that goes out by email that you can subscribe to on my website. And that's about kind of the great shift that we're going through, and why everything looks like it's exploding and everything seems so chaotic. And it's sort of like, no, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. So just calm down. And I do find that people need to be reminded that, hey, it's all going to work out fine. Just calm down. This is where we are in the renovation, So I send out a newsletter. In fact, I'm going to do that in the next couple of weeks. And I do a once a year predictions article for the Sedona Journal of Emergence in their predictions issue that comes out the 1st of November. So I'm getting ready to do that. And I go around and talk about my near-death experience and what I learned. And because I had my near-death experience in 1985, I've had over 30 years to integrate it. And as far as I'm concerned, it takes that long because there are so many layers of it. But so other than that, I'm a proud cat mom. And try to just incorporate as much love and joy in my life as I possibly can.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I've heard it can be very difficult to try to, like, it takes many years to try to integrate these things into your life because they're so profound and life-changing. I mean, I even look at some of my own spiritually transformative experiences, and I mean, I think it's been like 16 years and I'm still piecing it together. And I mean, I didn't have an NDE, but I have had some profound experiences. So it makes sense. So it's great to have you on our show. Could you start by just sharing with us your NDE and try to give us some detail of the things that you felt and what you're able to experience?
Sure. So it was 1985, and it was Columbus Day weekend. It was Columbus Day, as a matter of fact. And I don't know if people remember Blockbuster Video, but I had been watching movies all weekend, and I was taking my videos back to the Blockbuster store. And I had done that, and I got in the car and I was going down the road to the grocery store. And as they say, most most major accidents occur within 5 miles of the house. So I was right there. So I entered this intersection, and the crossroad was not directly perpendicular. It went at an angle, and as I was entering the intersection, someone else was coming the other way in the intersection, and all of a sudden they started coming over into my lane. And it happened so fast. I really only had time to think, oh my God, he's, instead of even turning. I don't think I got my foot off the accelerator, really. I might have. But the next thing I knew, I didn't feel any impact. The next thing I knew, I was looking down at the top of my car. And as you can imagine, it took me a minute to reorient myself and figure out what I was looking at and where I was and how I felt about that. And I think the first thing I noticed was that I felt like I had been freed from some really tight confinement, like a physical confinement. And I felt freed and I felt expansive. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And I looked around and I thought, that's the top of my car. And I thought, okay, if I'm looking down at the top of my car, but my body's still in the car, who is I? Who or what is this consciousness that's observing this? It's different from what I thought it was, because I thought my consciousness was my body. And it was sort of, okay. And oddly enough, I saw the other guy get out of his car and walk over and put his hand in my window. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. He's looking to see if I'm okay. And then I saw him turn my headlights off, which I found out later was he was trying to make it look like the accident was my fault for driving without headlights. And I ended up having to go to court over it, which I won, by the way. So anyway, but so I kind of lost interest in that. And because I had read, I guess, Raymond Moody's book about near-death experiences, which was probably, he and Ken Ring, I think, had each written a book. And I think that was all that was out there at the time, but I had read them. I said, there ought to be a tunnel of light around here somewhere. And as I could look in every direction, I mean, I was like, wow, this is so cool. But as soon as I thought of the tunnel of light, I heard this whoosh come in, and it came in kind of in my right side, and there it was. But before I even saw it, I felt it. And this is where we get into the difficult part, because even as a writer with a good vocabulary, there really are no words to describe the feeling because we don't have it here. So I start to feel this energy that is peaceful, loving, joyful, blissful, welcoming, familiar, wonderful. And of course I turned toward it, and it was beckoning me, it was pulling me into this tunnel of light, this bright light. And the farther I went in, as I say, it pulled me along. I mean, I suppose I could have fought it, but I didn't want to. But I also didn't have to make much effort to go in. The farther I got in, the stronger all of these feelings were and I guess that the most important feeling to me was, I feel like this is where I belong. I feel like this is what life, whatever, is supposed to feel like, but I haven't been here. And it was oh, thank God I'm back. You know, I'm where I belong. And I went through this and sort of came out into this realm, this environment of bright light. And it felt like a soup of what I was made of. I know that sounds weird, but I felt as if, you know, if you go to the beach, you see waves come up on the shore, and then the wave recedes, and then if you look around, you can see little indents in the sand where some water has been left. And I kind of felt like I spent my whole life being one of those little pockets of water that had been kind of left behind or something, you know, in a basically a hostile environment, and, you know, to fend for myself. But now the wave had come and grabbed me and pulled me back into the ocean where I belonged. And that was what it felt like. And it was interesting because it felt like I was part of everything I could see, and yet I was me. So there was a merging, and at the same time, I was separate. But I was where I was supposed to be. It was home. It was, oh my God, I don't know what that other place was, but I'm glad I'm not there anymore. You know, it's like, how did that happen? And here I am, I'm back. And all of these feelings of having yearned for this place, yearned for this environment, yearned for this love, yearned for this peace and this joy. I had been yearning for it my whole life, and then finally I'm there. And at the same time, I had this feeling of, it had been yearning for me the whole time I was gone. It was like, ooh, I just got a chill. The whole time I was gone, it was like this whole environment knew that I was not there, and it wanted me back. And it loved me so much, and it wanted me back. It was not whole until I returned. And all of these feelings were going through me, and I'm like, you know, I'm here, I'm staying, I'm never leaving. I should never have left in the first place, and I don't know why I did, but I'm back. It was just that kind of feeling. And so I noticed that there was like a commotion over here on the right, and I looked over, and there were all these people. And I went over, and they were all young, they were all happy, they were all vibrant. And the first person I noticed was my adoptive mother. So I had been adopted as an infant, put up for adoption, and I never knew anything at that point. I never knew anything about my birth parents. All I knew was I had been raised by my mother and father, but I knew that they had adopted me. And I had a brother who had also been adopted that I grew up with. You know, he was adopted from another family. And that was our family. Well, my adoptive mother died when I was 12 of cancer. And actually, she showed up in my bedroom the night that she died, and she said goodbye. And I knew that she was physically in the hospital at the time, and I gathered that she, you know, she was saying goodbye, so it meant that she was leaving. And I went out in the living room and told my grandmother, and that my mother had died. And just at that point, my father called from the hospital and said that that was so. So, but here she was. and she was younger than I had ever known her, and she looked fantastic. And all these other people, there were some aunts and uncles and grandparents, and they were all like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." And we've been watching you, and we've been with you, your whole life, and we're so proud of you. It's like, you've just done such a magnificent job. Well, you have to understand. It's like, I was a child of the 60s. I lived through the 60s. I'm the 60s generation, 50s generation. And I was about 35 at the time, and I had a kind of a low-level job, and sort of wasn't going anywhere, and I felt like I hadn't accomplished anything. I felt like I was totally underemployed and didn't know what to do about it. And, I hadn't gotten married, I hadn't had kids, I hadn't done any of those things that society tells us we're supposed to do. And I'm like, how can you be proud of me? I'm a total failure. It's like, I'm telling you, that place was so hard. I could barely get up every morning and put one foot in front of the other. I felt like I was just clawing my way through life and not getting anywhere for all the effort. And they said, "Oh no, you have to understand, literally getting up every day and putting one foot in front of the other, that's courage. That's an accomplishment." And they did say, "And you kept your sense of humor the whole time." I said, "Well, most of the time I was laughing at myself, because, oh my God, I made so many mistakes. I did so many stupid things." And they said, "But laughter is like one of the most spiritual things you can do. But we're just proud of you because you persevered no matter how hard it was." And it was. My childhood was not all that easy. No matter how hard it was, you just kept going, and you always did your best. And you always had a smile for people, and you tried to laugh. And yes, you wallowed in self-pity once in a while. But we don't blame you for that. It was like, but you snapped out of it, and you kept going, and you kept trying. And we're so proud of you for that. And I was like, oh my God, this is great, And I felt like the prodigal son coming back, and they had the big feast and everything. They were all so happy to see me. And then I noticed these other people that I had not met in this lifetime, but I knew them immediately. And it was my biological family. And they stepped up, my biological father, his parents, biological grandfather. My mother was actually there. I found out later she was not dead at the time. But she was there. It was like, okay. But they were there, and they were proud of me. And it was like, we did a really good job. And she and they and my my adoptive mother and my adoptive family members were all like, "Oh yeah, we did a great job, it all worked out." And I'm like, this is just bizarre. And okay, because this was like totally out of anything I could even imagine. But we talked and talked and talked. And at some point I thought, all this whiteness is really getting to me, because we're used to 3D here. We're used to colors and depth. And as soon as I thought that, it was as if this giant hand came up and with finger paints, and it just, the scene changed. And it was this landscape with rolling grass and trees and flowers and birds and butterflies, and all the cats and dogs. I mean, all the cats and dogs running back and forth, having a great time. All of the ones that I had had who had died, came over and said hi. And it was like, wow, this is great, because the colors that I saw, it makes everything on this planet look like it's just been washed out, and that like most of the color got washed out of it. Even the things that are like vibrant, like this color, is washed out. Over there, this color would be like, it's everything is so alive. And then I thought, well, I think I'm supposed to see somebody, but I don't know who. And I don't think it's here. And so there was this pathway. And I thought, I think I'm supposed to go down that path. So I did. And, I stopped to smell the flowers and hug the trees and talk to the trees and all of this. And I went through down this path and through this little bit of woods and over a little bridge, over a little stream, and up into this this clearing in the woods. And there was like this gazebo in the distance, and there were people in there. So I walked over there, and I walked in, and there were 12 of them, and they were all really tall, like 12 to 15 feet. And I'm 5'4.5" or so. And I'm like, but it wasn't intimidating. They were bright light, and again, just this feeling of intense love, like this achingly sweet, just cherishing feeling. And they just kind of regarded me, and I had the feeling like they could they could see everything about me, everything about my life, every thought, word, action, lack of action, omission and commission, everything about me. And yet again, I was so loved. I was so beloved. It was like, I can only imagine, like, if somebody had their child kidnapped and the child got returned like a year later, of how the parents would feel about that child, being back, and how much they love them, and how much they're just so happy to have you back. It was kind of like that. I was overwhelmed, because we don't have that kind of love here. With the conditional love that we have on planet Earth, I mean, half the time, I think most of us spend our lives trying to get people to like us, let alone love us. It's like, well, how about if I act like this? Will you love me? And here it's like, despite everything I had done, not that I had done horrible things, but I felt like I was scared of everything. I bent myself like a pretzel to try to please everybody around me, and still I didn't manage to. But they adored me, they cherished me, they loved me, and it was overwhelming. I mean, it can be really hard because we're not used to being loved like that. It was disconcerting, and it was uncomfortable at first, because I kept wanting to say, no, I've done this and I've done this, and I'm not that good, and I'm not, it was really weird. Weird but wonderful. And at some point I said, okay, so what was all that? It was really bad. And I said, there has to be a reason for that, but I can't remember what it is. And why would anybody voluntarily put themselves through that? I mean, obviously that body is not who I am. So if I'm this, I'm getting the feeling that I'm a lot bigger than I thought I was and a lot more powerful than I thought I was. Why would somebody ever put themselves through that kind of experience? Because Earth is not a place for wimps. Earth will kick your butt. Earth will like knock you down and drag you under the bus. Yeah. And so they showed me, it was all of a sudden, it was like all of these computer monitors, big flat screen TVs showed up, and they showed me like the history of humanity and my history, and that I had been, I had been here many times. I had had many different kinds of lives, and that we were all, it was sort of like as souls, we had all decided to see what it was like not to be in eternal bliss. Now, why would you ever want to leave that? But maybe it gets boring after a while, I don't know. But that we had all decided we wanted to experience that, and to see if we could pretend to be separate, and then at some point remember who we really are, remember who each other is, that we're all part of this like God soup, that we're all part of the heart of God, and that each one of us is a powerful divine being pretending to be a little human in a human suit, separate from everybody else. And it's like, wow, that would be a challenge to see if we could go that far away from who we are, and then somehow remember and bring ourselves back and bring back all of that experience, because as we're experiencing things, the all that is experiencing it. And it's like we're the way God experiences physical form. And so we gather all this experience and we bring it back with us. And I liken it to summer camp. Some people like summer camp, but for me, it's, you get all excited about going, and then you get there, and then you get mosquito bites, you get sunburn, you get snake bites. The other kids don't like you. You don't get picked for a team. The counselors don't like you. You're sleeping, your cot is under the leak in the tent. It's miserable. You get poison ivy. It's like, I want to go home. It's kind of the way I see it anyway. Some people just love it here, but I still have trouble. I still think, life on Earth just kicks you in the butt, and it's not the stuff that happens to us. It's not punishment. It's not, it's life. And so, but going back to my NDE, so they showed me all this stuff, and I said, and they showed me where humanity is going, which is, we are evolving. We keep heading more toward not really, I don't know that utopia is the word, but maybe, but toward, a better condition for humanity on planet Earth, where we actually do have peace, and we get along, and we respect our differences, and we have the opportunity to be creative, and have more joy, and that's where we're going. But humanity doesn't change fast. And so it's taken a while, but we're learning a lot, and we're all taking it back with us, and sharing it. And so at the end of it, I kind of said, well, that's all well and good, but I'm not going back, and you can't make me. And they're like, that's okay, you can stay. And I'm like, all right, good. I'm done with that place. And then of course I hear, and it's because it's all telepathic, I hear, but let us show you what you could accomplish if you go back. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the emergency room and a police officer was handing me a ticket for driving with my lights off. And I'm like, I mean, I did start to swear, sorry. It's like, why am I here? And this nurse comes over and says, you're in the emergency room. And I said, why am I here? Said, you've been in a car accident. I'm like, that's not what I meant. I could not believe I was back. And because I knew, they told me it was not a trick. They told me I did not have to come back, and I know I didn't have to come back. But I could not remember. And so I knew I had changed my mind. And frankly, I could not in that moment think of any conceivable thing that would make me change my mind and come back here. So I was mad at myself more than anything else. And I couldn't remember why I had come back. And I was really upset. And I stayed upset. I stayed upset for about 10 years. and for about 5 to 7 of those, I was severely depressed. And yeah, that became part of my journey too, of integration, because the things that I immediately understood, you don't, and NDE is so many levels of information that you get. You don't remember all of it right away. And in fact, for me, I've had stuff come to me even like 25 years later that it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, but I didn't remember it for, the 25 years in between. There's just so much. It's like it's all downloaded, but you don't have access to it all at once. And my immediate thing was that basically they told me that I had really gone off track, and that I had been so, I think, traumatized in my childhood. I mean, between the whole idea of being given away by your birth parents, having my mother die when I was 12, leaving me with the parent, my father, that I never really quite got along with, who was pretty harsh emotionally, very critical, very critical. And then 3 years after my mother died, when I was 15, my father married my stepmother, who never seemed to like me much. And she had 4 kids. And it was kind of like, I always felt like they really wished I would just go away so that it could just be my stepmother, my father, and her kids, But I kept showing up, So it was not easy. And and the thing was, I knew, because of the experience I had with my mother when she died, I knew there was more going on than I had been learning in Sunday school. And that kind of, I dove into, metaphysical studies and comparative religion and all of that stuff. it's like there's more. I was so much more than I had been raised to think I was. And so I studied all that stuff, but I had the intellectual understanding, but again, I had not integrated any of it. I wasn't living it. And in fact, because I was so insecure and had, so much self-loathing, I kind of used the information and knowledge that I had kind of like a baseball bat against other people. I used it to make myself feel superior, to make myself feel okay because I didn't feel okay. And if I could kind of say, oh, well, I know this stuff and you don't, then it's like, oh, then I must be okay. But that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And I've kind of, I feel like, the universe hit me in the head with a car to get my attention and then took me to the principal's office, and they kind of said, Ellen, what are you doing? You're a little off track. So my biggest problem at the beginning, besides my depression and my rage at being back, was that I kind of had to restructure my whole personality because I was viciously sarcastic. I had been raised in that. And I was intuitive and psychic enough and with a good enough vocabulary that I could like go for somebody's jugular with one snippy remark and I wouldn't even realize how devastating it was. And that was the first thing I realized was, oh my God, that's a hostile act. That's horrible. And here I thought I was this nice, sweet, kind person. It's like, no, you're like practically a murderer. And it's like, not physically, but verbally. And so I spent many years having to change that because I had this new perspective of it's all about the love. It's all about love. We are love, and we are supposed to be bringing that to this planet. And so many of us have gotten derailed in one way or another, and for one reason or another, that we're just trying to survive, and we're not in touch with that love. And therefore we're not expressing that love into the world. So that was for the first 10 years, that was kind of my mission, was to turn myself around. We design our lives. We set out our lives with many who help us, design what we're the big things, not everyday things, the big things, and things that we want to learn and experience. And I said, I looked back and I said, I had abandonment, I had rejection, I had, over and over and over invalidation my whole life. It's why, if I helped plan that, what's wrong with me? Because, am I a masochist or something? And the answer was no, you wanted to finally master self-love, and you had been working on it for several lifetimes, and it's a really hard one. And this time, because of things you wanted to do later in life, I mean, what I'm doing right now is probably one of those things. You needed to master self-love. And so you were determined that you were going to master it in this life or die trying. And I do remember saying, it almost killed me. And they said, almost. I'm like, easy for you to say, you're not in the body. You didn't experience all that. It was horrible. but you got there. Because, I mean, how can you spend the later part of your life, going on podcasts or going on stages and talking about you have this near-death experience and all of this other stuff? When I started doing it, I would watch people's eyes roll back into their heads. They thought I was crazy, but I had to learn it. And so it was like, okay, well, what is self-love? And how does one learn that? And it was a struggle for me because I did not have any models at all, for self-love. And I learned things like, being able to say no to people. That's not being rude. That can be self-love. Setting good boundaries, not going against your principles to please other people. But first you've got to know who you are and what those principles are and what boundaries you want. And so that's where I had to start off, because I didn't know who the heck I was. And I'm not even talking about starting with being a divine, powerful being made by the creator in his own image. I'm talking about just a human. Who am I as a human right now? I didn't know my likes or dislikes because I was always doing what other people wanted me to do. So I went through about, 10, 12 years of just trying different things. Okay, do you like this? No. Do you like this? Hey, I really like that. I'll do it again. Do you like this? Slowly learning, who is this Ellyn? What does she like? What does she dislike? What are her energetic needs? I mean, one thing I found out is that because I'm empathic and I take on other people's emotions, and I need a lot of downtime. I'm an introvert, and I need a lot of downtime to clear everybody else's energy out of my energy field and recharge my batteries. And so I spent most of the first half of my life exhausted because I could never say no to anybody, and I never had enough downtime. I never had time to recharge my batteries. And then when I started saying no to people, I went through this probably for a year. I would say no to somebody and they would start calling me names and, oh, you're selfish and you're this and you're that and you're nah, 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 nah. And I realized it's like they were so used to me just going along with whatever they wanted me to do, that as soon as I started saying, wait, I have rights too, and it's my job to take care of this body that I'm in, and I have to come first in that regard. And I'm sorry if that upsets your agenda or even hurts your feelings, but I have to I have to take care of myself as if I were taking care of a child in my care. And so those were all parts, of learning what self-love is. It was quite a turnaround. I mean, my whole life just like turned around, not fast, mind you. I lost friends, and then I got new ones, so it's and then learning to continue to try to be loving and kind through this whole thing. That could be a challenge depending on how people were reacting to what was going on. But the self-love thing has become, to me, like one of the most important things, I think, in the world, because when you look out in the world and you see all of the strife and the hate and the fear, to me, this is what self-loathing brings. Because the more in my experience, the more I have stepped into loving myself and respecting myself, I've also been able to step into recognizing the assistance that I get from the universe, from the angels, from guides, from God, from that I become more and more comfortable in allowing that heavenly assistance to come in and help me, and realizing we were never supposed to be here on our own. We were always supposed to avail ourselves of the assistance that's available. And once we get out of our ego and stop pretending that we can control everything, and just asking for help and allowing it to come, then what I've noticed is that I kind of sink back into that feeling of I'm completely protected, I'm completely supported, I'm completely loved. Everything I need is going to come to me. It may not come in the way that I think I want it, or the way I think it should, or the way I expect it, but whatever I need will be there. And then the more you start to rely on that and to believe it, and it becomes not just a belief, but a knowing, because you've experienced it, then your life turns magical. It's unbelievable, how things come to you. Whereas before, you feel like you're doing it on your own. You have to do it all by yourself. You're scraping and scratching and grabbing and pushing people out of the way and all this other stuff, when you didn't need to do any of that at all, because all you had to do was ask for it and then sit back and follow instructions, or wait for it to come.
Yeah, you've had a couple of thoughts while you were talking that I think my audience would appreciate. You've covered a lot of really important truths. I think of sometimes, we get so focused on how we're supposed to love other people, but even if we look at what Jesus said, even there where he says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, or love your neighbor as yourself, there's an implication there that yourself should be loved too, and that you should do something good for you. And it's all part of, everyone is of equal value. And it's just perfectly encapsulated by what you were saying, that we're a divine being created in the image of our Creator. And I've learned a lot from my own experiences and from NDEs about my own nature, and all of our natures as spirits. And it's like God is in everything in the universe. His light is extending in all of the universe, and we're a part of that. And we're created like him. His light is shining within us. It's, they describe this a lot in the near-death experiences, this idea that God is all that is. And even the Bible will talk about, every breath comes from our Creator, and he's giving us life. His life is in us, and it is our nature. It's his life. In fact, I recently learned, this is really interesting, in the Genesis story, there's actually 2 creation stories. And it's really, early in Genesis, he creates man. It shows a creation of man twice. One, he's from the dust, and the other, he's created in God's image. And so the dust is the body, and the other one is the spirit.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard that, or I forgot if I ever heard it before, but that's a wonderful distinction. It's true.
Yeah, I believe we are all literally children of God, and that that's something, it's our true nature within us. And so I think that's extraordinarily powerful. And I've come to see myself, when I see myself as part of God and not as a separated self, I feel so much more peace, and I can forgive myself for things, because there's another scripture too, nothing can separate us from the love of God. it's right there. Nothing can separate us. And that's exactly what it is. There's no separation. You even used the word separate. That was really exactly
We're
it.
pretending. That's part of the game that we're playing here, is to pretend that we're separate.
Yeah, exactly. We're pretending that we're separate for a while. So you started to talk about how you were learning through self-love and how it helped you to gain guidance from heaven. And could you talk a little bit about what you learned about how to receive your own personal guidance, and just any advice or thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, let me come clean and say, I'm a meditation failure. I mean, I've had people over the years say, you have to meditate every day for 20 minutes. And I'm like, maybe you do, but it doesn't work for me. I even took a class and I had to leave the class because everybody was having all of these experiences in their meditation and I got nothing. And I said, my self-esteem is going down the toilet. I have to leave this class. So to me, one of the problems is that we're all different and we all have different abilities and we all have different ways of receiving information. And I mean, I can tell you that our angels and guides are always around us. They can't really interfere unless we ask them. So that's number one. Number one thing to learn is ask. Ask for help. Ask questions. Ask questions. Be curious. And when we ask, they like leap in to help us. So how do we know? And unfortunately, there isn't really a manual for that, again, because we're all different. And there's all these different ways, some people see mental images like inside their forehead kind of thing. Some people hear voices. Some people feel a nudge. Some people, I have actually felt like somebody kicked me in the rear end on occasion when I wasn't moving in the right direction. It's like, really? Because
I know what you mean.
My guides know that subtlety does not work with me. It goes right over my head. I miss it. It's like, you got to be clear. And in fact, one of my most frequent prayers is, please bring me clarity about what you're trying to tell me. So it can be kind of, as you're learning to listen, it's kind of trial and error. And one of the things that helped me a lot was keeping like a hunch journal. And I would do it with like just little weird stuff that didn't matter. Like at one point I had quite a long commute to my office, and I could go down. There were 3 major ways I could pick from to get there. And so I'd start to leave the house and I'd go, should I go Connecticut Avenue? Should I go Wisconsin Avenue? Should I go the Beltway? And I'd just sort of see if I got even just a mild inclination, kind of like, which one feels better? Because I'm one of those people, I feel things. That's my major one. I feel things. And so I just sort of feel like, well, Wisconsin Avenue feels a little better than the other 2. So I'll go Wisconsin Avenue. So I would just kind of make a note that, oh, I felt like going Wisconsin Avenue, so I did. And a lot of times I'd be driving down Wisconsin Avenue and I'd hear on the radio, there's a giant backup on the Beltway. And I'd go, huh. It's like, oh, good job. Thank you. Gratitude and thank you. Very important.
Yes.
So I got into the habit of just sort of almost like whenever I'm going to do anything, it's like, does this feel good? Does this feel not good? Sometimes I can feel it in my shoulders. I'll have a choice between two things, and I almost like hold one in each hand kind of thing and go, okay, if I do this, how does it feel? And sometimes my shoulders will go up, and that's not a good sign. And then the other one, my shoulders go down and I feel more relaxed. It's like, okay, I'll do this. But I started keeping track, and just any kind of hunch I had. And sometimes I'm so stubborn. Sometimes I'd say, oh, it says I should go Wisconsin Avenue. I'm doing the Beltway, And then I'd be sitting in traffic and go, oh, had a hunch, didn't follow it, But that helps to just start getting in touch with the different ways things feel in our bodies. But my angels are really, they're determined, and they have a sense of humor. I mean, God has a sense of humor. If you haven't figured that out yet, it's like, one time I was pondering this question, should I do this? Should I do this? What should I do about this? Wah, 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 wah. And I just couldn't get out of my head. And a lot of times you have to let go of the question long enough for the answer to come in. And so I was sitting, I just couldn't get an answer. And I was so frustrated. I was sitting at a traffic light, and a city bus pulled up next to me, and it had an advertisement on the side. And whatever the slogan for the advertisement was, I looked at that, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I went, oh my God, that's my answer.
Oh.
So I can get answers to questions from dialogue on TV, from an ad or a headline in a magazine. It can come in all kinds of ways. Or, you're sitting in a restaurant and the person at the table next to you is having a conversation and they say something and you're like, because you'll get the feeling, it just, that term resonate.
Yeah.
You just kind of like, oh, and
I appreciate you telling me all this, because I get stuff like that too. Sometimes I feel a little crazy, and it's so nice just hearing somebody else who has experienced this, and a lot of people have. I've run into that a lot, actually, but it's nice. It's reassuring.
Well, especially since I started out as a failure, I couldn't meditate. But for me, meditation is also, if I'm doing something that my hands know how to do, so I don't have to really pay a lot of attention and my mind can kind of wander. Sometimes it's just taking a shower, but washing pots and pans in the kitchen. My hands are in water, and I don't pay much attention because I know what I'm doing, and my mind's wandering, and I can get downloads like crazy at that time.
I
get
actually, I have the same
moments.
thing with the shower. I have the same thing. That's funny. Yeah, a lot of times I don't really do 20 minutes either. I'll take just like a moment. I'll frequently throughout the day, like 30 seconds to a minute, to just be still, and then I'll listen for the feeling. I'll try to detect the feeling of the spirit, and then I'll try to tune into what thoughts come to my mind. And actually, you mentioned, talking about asking for angels and guides. I'm so glad that I developed a habit of asking for angels to be with me. That happened only a couple of years ago, I think, that I started doing that. Because before, I kind of was just tuning into God, and I think that works perfectly fine too. But it's like the it seems clearer when I'm asking for angels to be with me too. It's like I can feel, I can actually feel them
Mm-hmm.
with me.
Yes.
I very much so, sometimes more than others, especially in the wee hours of the morning, if I ask for that, or as I'm going to bed, if I'm just very still and I get some of what you're talking about, the mental imagery, or thoughts, words, and it feels like an atmosphere in the
Mm-hmm.
room. Yeah, it's great hearing you having confirmed this. Um, like it's kind of warm or peaceful, or like there's something in the air that's just this peaceful warmth, and it's always very reassuring kind of stuff. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
won't say always, because sometimes it's a an admonition, or like, don't do that. But yeah, and I at first it was kind of strange. I thought, am I a little crazy here? But the feelings are what really
Yeah.
persuade you, I think, that it's real, because it can be so pronounced sometimes. So I absolutely believe in angels or spirit messengers that can be with us, and it changes my day and puts me in a different mindset. It gives me tremendous peace. I just wish I was more active about it.
Mm-hmm. We forget. And one of my favorite ones, and I mean, I'd like to say that I started doing that right after my NDE, but I didn't. I mean, it took me 25 years to figure that one out. Um, I'm a slow learner. Um, but one of the things that really convinced me it was real was I was going through a really bad time. I think, I'd been betrayed yet again by somebody, which I will say, they say that the world is a mirror. And I used to think, well, betrayal can't be mirroring me because I don't betray people, but I was betraying myself. And that's what it was trying to show me. But I was having a bad time and I was really upset. And I just said, I really need to feel the love. I really need to feel the presence of loving beings right now and to feel that I'm not alone. And oh my God, Matthew, I I I could feel it. I felt like I was just completely embraced, and the calm and the peace and the love. And it was like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Our self-doubt is our worst enemy because we get this information, we get this guidance, we get this assistance, and then we go, nah, that couldn't be what I think it is. We
Mm-hmm.
immediately discount it. We immediately say, no, that can't be true. That can't be real. I'm just dumb. I'm just making that up. But we're not. We're not.
Yeah.
And what, you have to get to the point where you're like, I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I don't care if I think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have to just learn to trust ourselves a little bit more, and
And
to
that's the
just
self-love.
experiment. Like, if it feels, you know, you don't have to wonder really if it's like from God or an angel, because you feel it.
You do.
You feel it, and that tells you everything you need to know. And so you just yeah, I just try to practice and inviting that, and then just acting on what comes to me, and it's very helpful. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Um, Yeah, I've really appreciated your time with us on the show, and all the wonderful experiences you've been able to share. Um, if you can just let us know if you're open to people contacting or any way that we can learn more. Uh,
Oh, sure. Of course, I forgot to mention that I also do intuitive coaching. um, I have a website, which is Lion Magic, LIONMAGIC.com. And you can contact me through my website. And I'm always happy to hear from people. It's like, you don't have to sign up for a session just to contact me. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer questions that people have or whatever. Speaking of, I feel like that's part of my mission, is to be open and share, what I learned and what I have learned and what I continue to learn with people, because especially now we're in such a time of challenge. We kind of need to all hold hands and help each other instead of, no, this is mine, or, you're on your own. I mean, it's kind of, I like to help people. So, I'm happy to try to answer questions and of course, do coaching, but I have more information about my NDE on my website, different links for podcasts and presentations and things. And that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned how important it is to come together, and I really believe in that if we'll just be a little more open to other people's spiritual experiences, and even if they don't quite match up with our preconceived notions, and we just trust in God through Spirit to guide us, then we'll be able to really expand spiritually and learn so many things that can be enriching to us. And so that's one of my goals with my channel and with and just in life in general, just to be able to see the relationships between our different beliefs and our different experiences, and just show that, God is God of the whole earth, and he speaks to all of us, and doesn't always have to meet our expectations or what we think is how the world or how God works necessarily. It can be there can be truths that we're not aware of yet that can be enriching to us. So
Absolutely. I think, sometimes we have a tendency to make God over into our image.
yes, that's a good way of putting it. Like
and
putting him in a box.
everybody's on their own journey. It's like we're all walking home, but we're all on our own journey, and we need to honor that journey. And again, the self-love aspect of it is, when you really reach self-love, you become more curious about other people's beliefs and ideas, less defensive. You have no need to, convince other people that you're right, because you don't need that for your ego. You're comfortable in your own set of beliefs, yet you're open to hearing what others have to say and to value that and respect it, rather than this fighting over, I'm right, no, you're right, no, I'm right, no, you're right. And it's like, it doesn't matter who's right.
Yeah.
Let's just be kind and love each other, okay?
Yeah. It's like, did you want to do the right thing or just be right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for what you're doing to, get the good word out. And I think, if we all do our bit, we're all gonna make it to that utopia eventually.
Yeah, I believe God will lead us there, even if we screw it up pretty bad before.
Well,
But
we're here to make mistakes, it's just part of the deal.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.